Well, I've got it back together. Didn't record much of putting it back together because I figure it's all kind of redundant and boring. It was supposed to always be together. So now that the gaskets are fixed, it seems to be holding coolant. Well, so it's finally time for me to start getting this dash taken care of. As you can see, I've got these massive cracks that caused me to completely gut the interior because I wanted to take care of them. But I've also got some, like, I don't even know what this is, but there's something stuck to the dashboard there. It's obviously completely dirty, caked with dirt. We got to get all that cleaned off, and anywhere that the material is starting to separate, I want to glue this back down so that the lower section doesn't have this huge hump in it and actually can attach, because the new dash glues itself right to the old one. So I think before I worry about trying to get the new one on, I need to get the old one attached as best I can anywhere where it feels like it's letting loose. So I'm going to go through and put silicone underneath. This is what they sent me to use with the new dashboard. I actually usually use the right stuff from Permatex. This is normally the silicone I use, 1 minute gasket. This is the black stuff. I might use this versus what they actually sent me because I know how strong this stuff is, and I don't really know this brand. Full disclosure, I've never done anything like this with the dashboard. This has been cracked like this since I've owned the car, and I've never attempted to do anything to fix it. But I saw this as a relative cheap repair. It's like a thin piece of plastic that is supposed to slip right over this, and I think as long as I get the majority of this stuff stuck down tight, it should look good. So we'll see how it turns out when I'm done. Well, I spent a fair amount of time with the air compressor and with glass cleaner. You can see the big stain in here. I used some brake clean, and I'm glad I'm recovering it because it was like bleach on a new shirt. It totally stained it. So don't ever use brake clean on your dashboard because it will destroy it instantly. All right, so I've got the dash. It's about as clean as it'll come. This is all just discolored from that brake cleaner, but it's all dry. I fixed where it was coming up back here on the bottom side of the foam to keep it from coming off the dash. There's another spot over here that I kind of want to do the same thing with right here. But then I went ahead and I got the new dash out of the plastic just to see exactly how well it fit. I did kind of test fit it. It looks like it's going to snap over it pretty good. I'm kind of a little worried about how wavy the top of the dash is right here, but there's really nothing I can do about that other than put it together and see how it looks. All right, so while I let that stuff dry overnight, fitment issue, you can see this gap here. This whole part wasn't quite made right. I trimmed it down to try and get it to fit as close as I can. I'm going to leave these zip ties here because they won't matter to me, and I won't be able to put the ashtray back in. But with my my radio will actually fit. Well, let me get the wires through there. So this isn't exactly how it is, but my radio will actually cover up the ashtray anyway. So you won't be able to see any of those zip ties or the fact that the ashtray is not in there. Obviously later in life, if this radio gets taken out, there's obviously no ashtray, so I'll save it. Over here you can see the gap is huge. Once I get the rest of this all secured down, which this is all glued really tight here, seems to be holding. This section over here is a little loose on the corner, so I'm going to re-glue this, and then I'm going to put a few clamps to bend this down and just try and get it close to it. So I'm guessing around the outline of the glove box, it's going to look kind of crappy, but at least when you look in through the front windshield, the top will be nice and smooth and won't have the big crack in it. But overall quality, like I said, this was less than $100. I've seen them for about $200. I'm going to say if I ever did this again, I would buy the $200 one and hope it's a heck of a lot better, because this doesn't fit very good at all. So I'm doing the wiring on my gauges, and I'll kind of show you how I like to do it. Since most of these go to the same place, you have the yellow wire is going to be power, the black wire is going to be ground, and then they just linked all of them together. And then for the lighting, we have this yellow with a white trace will end up being the positive for the lights, and then the black wire is obviously a ground. So I just have the sensor wire for the oil pressure and for the temperature, and then the voltage is just the power and ground for the voltage gauge, and then the air fuel ratio sensor, that's a little bit more difficult to wire because I have to get this larger plug through the firewall. I'm gonna have to make another hole, and we're gonna run that in, and then we'll wire this up. So one of the problems when you go to put aftermarket gauges in an LS is you have to get an adapter that'll go from metric to the pipe thread that the sending unit comes with, or the sending unit that comes with the gauge. So what I did was I took the factory gauge, or the factory sending unit, I broke it off, and then I drilled and tapped this to the same 1/8" pipe thread. However, this would sit too close to the cam position sensor, so I have to shim it with this bushing in between here to get it a little bit taller. And so when it's all done, it's going to screw into the engine just like that. Now for coolant, you kind of run into the same problem with the temp sensor. They want you to normally take and buy a special sensor that's shorter that goes in this back plug with an adapter. What I did instead was I bought some brass fittings and I grounded this housing with this cord cable to the block, and then this sensor is now connected to the gauge, which I just looped the heater hose. So it won't be exactly cylinder head temp, but it should be probably more accurate for what the temperature of the engine is versus going into the back of the engine, because on an LS, the water comes through the block and comes up to the back of the cylinder head. So if you were taking the reading back there, that's going to be the coldest part of the cylinder head versus the front portion, which is the hottest. And what's happening now is the water comes directly out of the front port on the cylinder head gasket into the water pump and is forced out of this line to the heater core, which I don't have. So I looped it right back in, which will pull that hot water across the base of the thermostat and recirculate it into the engine until the thermostat opens. So this sensor should be an accurate reading. All right, so I don't have any interior yet. Well, some of it, but I don't have it finished. But I got my gauges installed, and I'm going to test and make sure that the oil pressure gauge works. And I'm probably going to run the car long enough to see if the temperature gauge moves. It's a nice enough day I can finally open the garage door. And we're going to fire this up and see how it sounds here. So I still have the loudest fuel pump ever, but fuel pump's on. so far, it looks pretty good. Oil pressure is a little lower than I'd probably like, but I think it was only around 45 pounds, which at high idle in a cold engine, I thought it'd be a little bit higher than that, but we'll see. Kind of want to just double check everything. It is a very used engine, so everything in it was used. I did put new cam bearings in it, so I know you're supposed to check the transmission fluid with it running, and I will, but it definitely sucked down some more. So I just want to kind of, I haven't put it into gear yet, so I still don't know if my transmission works, which was put together in a very quick amount of time. Oh, my block is actually getting some warmth to it here for my temp sender, so you know, I don't know that I had this totally full yet either, so that's the other reason I didn't want to run it too long. And now it sucked out a whole bunch of coolant, so I'm glad I shut it off. All right, we're gonna get the coolant refilled here and start it back up once I get that full. Well, so I got it shut off here and I was filling the antifreeze, and this hole right here, I don't know if it picks it up on the camera or not, you can see it smoking. Yeah, there's smoke coming out of that hole. So I'm pretty sure that that's a vacuum leak and I have to plug that hole. So I'm glad I saw that because I might not have realized that right away. But I think that is actually a drilled and tapped hole for a bracket that I'm not using, and I can see smoke coming out of it, so it has to go into the intake runner. Well, it turns out I'm just gonna have to check and see if it leaks vacuum with my finger because I don't have a screw small enough to plug it. I was gonna plug it off and then take the screw out, but we're just gonna start it out. So, again with my super loud fuel pump. Yeah, it's not working very good with that leak in the back or intake manifold. So I got to find a screw small enough to fit that. All right, so I found out my power steering was empty. Well, I remembered my power steering was empty. So I went ahead and topped that off. And we're gonna fire it up, make sure the power steering works. I'm going to attempt to test the alternator. I don't have it actually wired yet, but I should be able to put this test light to the L terminal and turn the alternator on so it'll charge, because right now it says it's not charging. But the oil gauge is working. Didn't even look to see if the tach was working, but that should be. I have enough coolant in it to where that should circulate and work. We're gonna double check that. Yep, we're good. All right, I found a bolt that's not the right size, but it plugs the hole just for the moment. And yeah, let's see if we can't double check that tranny fluid and maybe even put this thing into gear and see if the transmission works. Fingers crossed on that. My noisy fuel pump's in. Oh. I think my battery. I hope the fact that my battery's junk is why that just didn't start. I'm gonna put the booster pack on it, and then yeah, we're gonna try and fire that alternator and make sure that works, because I know it wasn't charging before. And the battery's not a good battery in this car, as it is a very old battery. But and it's a long way from the engine. However, I was expecting that to start. So let's try that again. Fuel pump. And sure. Not tight because that's leaking, so I do have an oil leak. I gotta fix that quick. All right, so I fixed the power steering. The line on the back of the pump wasn't quite tight, and I realized when I was trying to charge the start the alternator, I was going off of a ground, and I forgot I have to give it a power source, not a ground source. So I'm going to see if I can get the alternator to activate now, because what I'll do is I'll give it... Shouldn't that make a light? Okay, so there's a light. I thought it was the L terminal. Maybe I'm on the wrong terminal of this alternator. Well, getting a ground through that circuit, but not through the lamp circuit that I thought I should have. So maybe I'm thinking about that wrong, and this is the one I need to put power to. So by touching that, it should turn the alternator on and the light should turn off, as long as that's the right one. So we'll restart it, test that alternator. I'm going to quick check the training fluid with it running. And I think I'm going to put it in gear, even though I don't have a seat, just to see the transmission actually shift into gear. And by all means, I need to get the seats in this thing. And next week, when we come back after the eclipse, this thing's getting a good test drive. And yeah, hopefully this car's in good condition. Let's test fire it again. Alright, touch this to here. The light was on and then went off. I'm now charging because it turned on my wideband O2, which isn't connected yet. And I turned my voltage gauge went up. pretty healthy. Woo. That gas is 2 years old also, but it has race fuel in it, so you can see my airflow, or my air fuel is sitting at 14.9 because I don't have the sensor in. Looks like I'm at 180 for coolant temp. I can feel the thermostat open. The radiator's hot, which means this is working perfect. So this should be an accurate temperature. I obviously don't have a cooling fan, so can't run it for too long, but the gauges are all working. I got probably 35, 40 pounds of oil pressure, pretty steady at idle. It's at 800 RPM. She's loading up a little bit with fuel in here, so I obviously probably have it set a little bit too rich. He sounds pretty good though. Smoky though. But I'm so excited to feel that transmission shift into gear and to hear it idling like this. Shut it off before it gets warm, but so one upgrade I always wanted to make also was to support the front end a little bit better. So I made an angle iron bracket where I can actually bolt the front nose at the bottom now. This used to just kind of flop around. It was pretty rigid, but on the highway it did seem to want to float a little more than I probably wanted it to. And with going on power tour this year and driving it on the highway for a very long time at high speeds, I figured one extra support definitely wouldn't hurt it, especially since it's, you know, over 20 years old now. But it's got 4 hood pins in the top, 2 in the fender, and that used to be all I had, and now I have 1 on each side on the bottom just to give it that extra support. So should definitely work. I think that's just about it on the bottom that I have to get finished up. I have my cooling fan. I took and I gave this a coat of paint. I had some green paint laying around, and then instead of having like stick-on type, I had adhesive foam as the protectant that kind of rubbed through where I was making contact with the radiator. I took a section of heater hose and made a rubber one instead. This should be much more durable, and hopefully that cures my problem and I don't have any radiator issues. But we gave it just a little darker green paint. Looks a little better than the chipped off rusty stuff. Again, you don't really ever see it unless the hood's off. I went through, I evened out the headlight buckets as even as I could get. The headlight holes aren't exactly even because of the fiberglass isn't perfect, but they're close enough. I'm gonna stiffen them up with a little bit of a bracket back in behind here once I get the hood off, just to make sure they're not bouncing around. And then we're gonna get the new headlights put in. And yeah, we're ready for some test driving. I'm getting pretty excited. Well, I still don't have seats in there, but I'm not sure. I haven't quite decided. I have the originals back here. I think we might end up just throwing the original seats back in it. As much as I'd like to have something a little nicer looking, they're not totally uncomfortable. Yeah, I just don't know. I've got these Flex Steel van seats. I could easily pop the armrest off. They're gray, they would match. They're super comfortable also, but they're kind of difficult to mount because they are a bigger, taller seat. I don't know. I haven't made that decision 100% yet. We might be going with those. They would be super comfortable on the long drive. And they're in much better shape. So we'll see. Well, so one of the things I really wanted to do besides fixing the crack in the dash was to fix the cracks in the seats. However, we're down to less than 50 days and I'm running out of time. And I took them to the upholstery shop, and the guy, basically he needs a year before he can do it. And he wanted more money than I can just replace all the seats for. So I'm going to put some seat covers on them, I think. But one thing I have to fix is I got to do a little bit of a repair here to the bottom. The bar that went across that linked all of these rods together was broken. So I found this. It's a little too big to fit through the eyelets. So I'm just going to add a little chunk of wire to tie these 5 that are left to this bar. And then I'm going to run some flat rope strap that I have that I used on a different car that I did this to once before. And that'll make my seat have a lot more structure to it. And then we're going to throw, I got a set of seat covers. They're black. And I think I'm going to do black and emerald green just because, well, it looked good with the car. Anyway, we're going to throw some seat covers on it, and hopefully it'll not show up through the side too bad. I might have to put some black duct tape on there or something to kind of hold it together a little bit more. But if they can get me through this year, I'll find some new seats for it later. Or who knows, maybe next week I come across a pair of seats that I really want and I take these back out. But I want to test drive this car, and the only way I can do that is with the seats installed. So this is what I'm doing today. Well, I can't say it's the greatest repair, but I use this flat rope to wrap around. I guess I should have showed you before I put the cover on. I put a steel rod across the top. I wire tied these with mechanics wire, the 5 that were left to it. And then I went through and I hit it with this strapping. Should make it a much better seat. Again, I hope to fix them someday in the future, but with the time I'm running out of, they're going back in the car for today. Well, this is a huge moment in the Firebird's build. It's outside. Well, I have to say that was a success. I only went to the end of my street because obviously I don't have the nose on it. Figured probably would be a ticket waiting to happen if I tried going down the street looking like this. And the other problem I have is my cable, or my connection that runs up to my air cleaner, gets caught on the brake line. It makes the throttle stick, so definitely wasn't gonna screw around with it sitting like this. But I ran it up to about 30 miles an hour, went through all 3 gears, went into reverse, came back, went through all 3 gears. I'm extremely pleased so far. I am gonna put the hood on it and we are gonna take it for a test drive. Well, we're in tornado watch right now, so there's 100% chance of storms tonight. So we're probably not gonna take a test drive in it too far tonight because again, the wiper motor's still missing. But other than that, I'm pretty happy. Cooling fan's working perfectly, exactly how it should. We got good pressure on the system. I got no leaks. Yeah, definitely have to go through and double check all the nuts and bolts and just make sure everything's put together correctly. Well, it's finally stopped raining long enough that I'm pretty sure I can go to the gas station, put some fuel in it, take it to the car wash and give it a bath because it is filthy dirty. I want to get it all cleaned off so I can kind of give it a wax job and see what I have to do with the body. Probably don't have much time to do a whole lot of anything with it. I do want to finish getting the mirrors done and the door panels and the rest of the interior put together, but hopefully mechanically the car's complete. I do want to finish adjusting the headlights a little bit more if I can. The front end just doesn't fit perfect, but it is what it is. We're rolling, cruising 45 at about 2,000 RPM. Gauges all look great. Air fuel's a little bit, I definitely need to adjust the car. We're jumping around quite a bit. If I give it just a little bit of fuel, it seems to go a little lean and then it goes pig rich, so. But 55 is about 2,500 RPM. Over 50 pounds oil pressure, she's cruising. Well, the first drive went great. Made it back just in time. Actually got a little bit of sprinkles. Just started to get on the hood as I backed into the garage because it started to rain again. But yeah, it's gave it a bath, took it down the road, ran it up to about 75 miles an hour. Ran, handled, everything was great. The only thing I can say is I did take off in first gear and it shifted out of first into second at like 4,500 RPM, and I don't know why it did that because I was still in manual in first. It shouldn't have upshifted. So I may have to adjust the vacuum modulator or look into that. I'm not really sure why it did that. The old transmission would hold first gear as long as I wanted, and I thought I put the same shift kit and did it the same way, but not sure. So everything's totally different. There's nothing that's the same in the car, with the exception of the actual car itself and the air cleaner and carburetor. Well, and my unfortunate front seats, those are still the same, but I've got a totally different dash, different radio, completely different powertrain. All the speakers are new. Like it's a completely new car to me. Can't wait to actually get out and drive it on the road. For this week, I think we have some car shows coming up. Yeah. Any test drive you can take that you end up back in the garage and not behind a tow truck is a good first test drive. So, and really I don't have any actual problems or concerns with it when I drove it, other than, like I said, it seemed to shift out of first gear too soon, which may have to do with the linkage just not being adjusted right, or the vacuum modulator. Still need to do the fuel pump. I do have seat covers coming to get rid of these cracks, and I want to redo the door panels with the black vinyl that I made the back dash out of. I think keeping everything black on the interior will look fine. And yeah, got to kind of make a decision on tires. I'm not sure if I want to try and drive it all the way with these tires on there. They're a couple years old in the front. The rear ones are actually, these are pretty old tires if I remember correctly. I put them on off of something else. Yeah, they're dated from 2010. So these are actually some pretty old tires. I probably should change those before I try taking them. They look like they're in great shape yet, but I'm sure a couple burnouts they'll be gone anyway and we'll need new tires. So, oh yeah, now it's really downpouring. So hopefully this is the last day of rain. We've had a ton of it, and cold weather, period. It's supposed to be nice the next couple days up until, I think, Wednesday we get some more rain. It's Sunday now, so I think we get 2 days of nice weather, rain, and then I think it's 3 days of nice weather, and then I'm off to Florida for 10 days. And when I get back, I got basically 2 weeks to make sure that this car is ready to go on power tour, because time is running out and it's going really fast. Well, it's Thursday, first Thursday of the car show season. They actually, I think they canceled the East Dubuque car show they put on Facebook, but there's a different car cruise tonight that we've had kind of crappy weather all day, which is why they canceled the first car show. We're gonna take this guy for its first test drive. Well, second, technically. I drove it into town once already, but we're gonna take this and see how it runs. So we only have 38 days left to the Hot Rod Power Tour, and this will be kind of the second test drive of it. I do have a couple issues. One of them I'll show you once we get going here. All right, so a couple of the problems that I have, besides I know my rear end is bad, the posi, it's worn out. Cup holders. I don't know where I'm gonna put a cup holder at in my car. I gotta figure that out, because that's gonna be important for Power Tour. Might get one of those ones that hang on the door here. I'm not sure. Still have to fix that. Other thing, mirrors. I'm currently in the process of painting them, but they are not done yet, so I currently don't have mirrors on the car. Now, for the thing that I kind of screwed up, with only 2 days left of moving out of my shop, I put my transmission back together. And I'm not really a transmission guy. So what I found out is I forgot that the first gear has like an automatic shift out of built into the transmission. So when I hit 4,200 RPM, even if I'm holding low gear, it automatically shifts into second, which for the big block that the motorhome came out of was probably a good thing. For this 5.3, it's a bad thing. So I have to decide if I'm going to tear the transmission back apart, and the rear end, and the mirrors. And I have my door panels I want to fix because this is all torn. And with 38 days left till the Power Tour, I'm actually going to be gone for about 15 of them on a trip with my daughter. So I'm running out of time, but here's the second test drive. Hopefully we don't have any problems, and let's go check out the cool cars and see how many of them came out with this cloudy day. All right, well, we made it here. There was a lot of traffic, so I didn't really have a chance to show you the first gear shifting out. I'll make sure I do that before the end. But over here must be the crowd that's actually coming out. I don't know how I get there exactly, if it's this parking lot. I don't think maybe it is. Anyway, we're headed over there, and we're gonna see how many people come out for the cruise. Well, we're all gonna line up. Didn't get a huge turnout because of the weather, but there's a half dozen or two here. So we're gonna get lined up and go for a cruise through town and head up to the Sonic. Well, the car's running great. I made it here a little late. There's only a half dozen people still here, but we're gonna find out how good the headlights are aimed, because the sun's going down. I still got to make it home. So all right, now here's the problem with my shifter. I'm in first gear and I'm not going to shift, and it automatically shifts, and I'm still in first because there's a safety feature built into the transmission I need to override, and I forgot to do it. All right, well, took the Firebird out, put about 125 miles on it. Definitely have carburetor issues. I'm gonna have to do some adjustments there, but it ran pretty well. I'm gonna get it back up in the air, figure out what I have to do for the rear end, and think about fixing the transmission where it shifts out of first gear too early. We have 35 days for the Hot Rod Power Tour. However, for me, I have 20 because I'm on vacation for the next 15. So I lose all of that time to not be able to work on the car or test drive it. So while I'm on vacation, I'm ordering some more parts. Well, so I suspect I may have an issue here. I've got some coolant leakage from my radiator. Hopefully it's just that hose clamp right there. There's a drip on the bottom of the radiator right there, and there's a spot there and there. Looks like quite a bit was dripping off of it. The front side's all dry. Yeah, hopefully it's just that hose clamp right there. And not a big deal. Otherwise, she's looking pretty dry. I do see some power steering fluid leakage there, which I made a mess. I never really got that all the way cleaned up. I probably should. So one thing I never liked about my Firebird was the fact that, well, I had cracks in the dash. The other was the seats. So I took these to the upholsterer, and they're all falling apart pretty bad. And he gave me an estimate of over $2,000 and told me he wouldn't have it done till December. Power tour is in June. That wasn't going to work for me. So what I ended up doing was I went ahead and I ordered a set of seat covers. They're supposed to be black and emerald green. I figured that would be a good color because somewhere along here the car turns emerald green. It'll match pretty close depending on which way you look at it. And the red wouldn't have had the same pattern in the rear. And so I only did front seats because the rear's in pretty decent shape. It still matches my headliner. Red and green, it's kind of like Christmas. So we're going to put these on and see what they look like. Well, all right, I don't have them strapped in and pulled tight or anything, but just setting them in there. They obviously don't fit perfect, which I never expected them to because these seats were kind of custom anyway and the foam was kind of not lining up the way it was supposed to. But they look pretty good. I don't have the attachment for the seat belt to the back of the seat, so I think I might switch them around so that the driver and passenger on the other sides, so that way this hole isn't visible through the window. But yeah, for a much less than $2,000, that's gonna make the car look really nice. We'll get them all strapped in there nice and tight, and we'll take it outside in the sun and we'll see what it looks like. But I think that was a major improvement for the car. Yeah, I think I got 20 days left until this thing has to be driving to power tour. We still have first gear still screwed up, shifts out of first gear at 442, 4,600 RPM, something like that. So I have to take the transmission apart and fix that valve. And then I have the rear end problem. The posi is definitely broken. I don't know that I trust driving on it with these gears and that differential for that long of a period of time. So we're going to see what we do with that. But as far as the seat covers go, I think that was money well spent. We'll get it all strapped down. It comes with a bunch of these attachments and hooks and stuff like that. So I got to get some room in my garage so I can get the doors open and get in there and pull it all tight. But I'm super excited about that. I think it's going to look really good. Yeah, so much better than the cracks. Well, one of the great things about an LS is the fact that they can rev really high compared to the old Pontiac engine in this. So that the fact that the transmission won't hold past 4,500 RPM is a big problem for me in first gear if I'm going to have fun with this car. So even though it's technically together, test driven, and not really having a problem with the transmission as far as it shifting and doing its thing, I do think that I have to fix the fact that I can't get, or that the safety mechanism is in there to make it shift into second gear, even if I'm holding it into low gear. I really feel that with all the work that I've done to this car, to not have that feature to be able to hold first gear and have fun with it, it's going to be really annoying. Because even when I go to downshift, I have to get down to where the car's almost stopped before it will actually downshift into first gear because of that valve. So I'm going to take it apart, and hopefully I don't find any other problems in the transmission, but this will be a good time to look. It does have probably 100, 150 miles on it, something like that. I've driven it a few times now. So this will be the first time I've taken the pan off to see all the dirt. And this transmission did have some rust in there, so I don't know how good I got it cleaned anyway. So it'll be nice to see what's inside the pan. And I'm going to show you how to fix that valve so that way your transmission can hold first gear if you're having the same kind of problem. All right, so I've gone ahead and I pulled the transmission pan, and what is causing my problem, let me get this situated here, is behind here there's a valve that I have to modify and grind the corners off, and then there's a hole right here in the bottom that's a drain. what I need to do is put a plug in here and modify this valve, and that'll allow me to hold first gear through however many RPM I need it to hold. Right now it shifts at about 4,600 RPM, and that's way too early. All right, so what you can see I did here was I took a couple of washers to hold the separator plate up to the transmission case, so that way all of my check balls stay where they're supposed to be. And I dropped the valve body out, which I only got about 150 miles on it, and I do have some material in the bottom of the pan, which I'm not super excited about. Again, I can't say I got this the cleanest. I also built it in a very short period of time. I don't know how much of that dirt was from old components versus the new clutches. Not sure. But what I have to do is, out of my way here, this valve, I have to pull it out and make some modifications, flip the valve body over and plug a hole. So I'm going to get the fluid all drained out of it, make sure I don't lose any other parts or the manual valves or any of these other components. And I'll show you that when we get to it. All right, so with the valve body completely removed, what I have to do is, I'm gonna flip it over here and show you this. There's a hole right here that has to be plugged, and this valve that's inside here, let me pop this guy out for you. Whoop. Pop that little pin out right there, which holds in this valve here. It should go ahead and slide out one piece like this. Okay, and then there's a valve and a spring that stays in here like that. Leave that alone. Then down inside here, is it magnetic? And it is. We have our shift valve. Now what we have to do with this is, it's a round bore here, and we're going to cut 2 flat spots on each side of it with a grinder, so that way fluid can get past it, and that this piston no longer does what it's supposed to do and makes the transmission shift at about 4,500 RPM. We plug the vent hole on this side here, and then when it's in there, it'll vent through the piston rather than the piston getting pushed. Okay, now that I've got this valve removed, what we're gonna have to do is modify this valve to allow it to stay into first gear until I manually shift it out of first. So what the process of that is this outside larger diameter needs to be ground down to about the size of the smaller diameter to allow fluid to escape past it, rather than fluid pushing behind it and causing this to push against here, which then causes it to shift out of first gear. Yeah, I assume you could probably change the spring pressure in this too and make that change, but the way this works, this valve will no longer have pressure holding it out, and it'll stay in the bore all the way until I manually shift it into second gear. All right, so I took it onto the bench grinder, and I made 2 flat spots on both sides of the piston, so that way the fluid can get past it. When it's trying to push on the backside here, it'll just release itself. So this will go back in just like it came out. However, before I put it in, I have to flip it over here, and I have to make the modification here and plug this hole. So I'm going to get that capped off, and then we'll get this back together. So what I've done here is I've got a 1/4 inch tap. I put a 1/4 20 thread into the vent hole. I took a 1/4 inch bolt, the shortest one I had. I actually had to make it a little bit shorter. I made sure it was the right length by screwing it all the way in, getting it nice and tight with the valve completely removed. So this should block that vent completely. And then I took my valve that I've modified with the flat spots on it, and I made sure with a magnet here that the valve goes all the way past the bolt and it doesn't interfere with it at all. And so as long as your valve floats in there and your bolt doesn't touch it, the bolt will not hurt anything. And yeah, that little modification should make this thing stay in first gear until I want to shift it out of first gear, and should allow me to actually pull it into first gear while I'm at higher RPM. So as like right now, I had to go down to about 7-8 miles an hour to actually get it to first gear, and I should be able to pull it into first gear at 20 and punch it. I hope so. Don't know a ton about transmissions, otherwise I wouldn't have screwed up and put it back together without this being done. But I do know that my other transmissions I've done, I think this was already done in them, and I've never actually had to do it because I don't ever recall doing this before. So hopefully it works. We'll find out shortly. Well, it's Thursday night and we are taking the Firebird for its first test drive after I ripped the transmission apart to see if I fixed my shifting out of first gear too early. All right, well, here's the first test. We're on the on-ramp. 4,000, 5,000, 55, 6. She is fixed.
That felt good. That was a nice shift.
Yeah, it was kind of soft. Did kind of give me a little bit of a gallop, but I definitely now have the transmission working the way I wanted it to work. Awesome. Our first Thursday car show of the year brought out some pretty awesome cars. Got a V10 Audi sitting next to a Ferrari. Whole bunch of cars. Absolute beautiful night here in East Dubuque, Illinois. Well, an important part I really hope I don't need for this year's power tour has just came in. Somewhere I lost the original one that I took off the car because it was here. I just have no idea where I put it. But I have this new one. And, well, used, came off of a 79 Camaro, so I hope it works. Yeah, anyway, we're going to get it bolted in, and my car should have wipers for the first time in 25 years since I took them off. Car was never meant to drive in the rain, and now that I'm going to take it on power tour, I'm hoping it doesn't rain, but that has never happened where we didn't at least get rained on once. So I'm really hoping it's a very dry week, but can't guarantee that. So we're going to get the wipers working and just pray that we don't need them. So it should be one of the final things I need besides the rear end, which those parts are coming, and we're going to put a new posi in it. And yeah, just really hope that we don't have any major problems. All right, well, we're 18 days away. My differential showed up, so it's time to get this one pulled out so we can fix the posi. I'll show you what I did to kind of cobble it together and why I don't feel like it's safe once I get it out. I don't know if I actually have the old footage of when I cut it on the brake lathe or not, but I'm gonna get the differential cover pulled. We're gonna get the axles pulled out of both sides, and then I bought a new Eaton True Track. Get it open here, I'll show you what's in there. All right, so here's the True Tracks. If you haven't seen one of these before, they work a little different than a clutch pack type unit. So what it allows is when you're going around a corner, these side gears in here will work like an open differential. However, when you lose traction on one side, the wheel that has the most traction will get all of the torque. All right, so kind of like an open carrier, when I turn this one this way, the other wheel spins backwards. I don't know if I can show you over there or not. How that works is inside of here, you can see that gear rotating. There's 3 gears that run across in 3 different places that catch the side gears. So when you're going down the road, both wheels are going to travel at the exact same speed. But when you turn a corner, the gears allow torque to let the outside wheel spin faster. And it gives traction to the wheel with the least amount of torque. Kind of doesn't make sense when you have it up here because it seems like it's an open carrier, but it definitely works, and they work really good. They're super quiet. You don't ever get differential chatter when you're going around corners or anything like that. And haven't broke one yet. I had one in my other burnout car, and I was really happy with it. I put them in Mustangs and a couple other things. So we're gonna see how it works for this car. But it's definitely a unique differential because it seems like it's an open differential when you spin the wheel. Like there's no posi, but it'll definitely lay posi tracks. So we're gonna get it all buttoned up, put together, and we'll have to go test it out. All right, so I can't find the footage of what I did to actually fix this differential, but this is what they call a cone type. It doesn't have clutch packs, but these side gears are actually cones that fit into the case. I'm gonna get this pulled apart and I'll show you what I did. All right, so first thing, I went ahead and I took out the springs that push on the side gears. And as you can see, the pin gets stuck in between the plates. So you can kind of see the hole where it's kind of ovaled out. I had to grind these plates to allow the springs to get expanded out further, which then allowed the side gears to push. Let me pull these out quick. All right, so with the side gears taken out, you can see the big wear there. What I had done is I put this on a brake lathe and I cut the back side of this so it would fit deeper in to this cone. It would actually, I'll get the other one out here too. Yeah, I cut both of these on a brake lathe and knocked off a little bit of the back side so that they would actually have some grip and grab on the sides. Unfortunately, all of this, like these aren't rebuildable. Once this wears and gets chewed up like this, you just have to throw them away. And that's the case with this one. So that's what I actually did. I wish I had the footage, but I can't find it. It was slipping really bad, and obviously the posi wouldn't work before a burnout competition, before I blew the motor up. So this is what I did to fix it, and why I didn't trust taking it on Power Tour. I mean, you just see how chewed up that is. And even when I would shift gears, it was only spinning one wheel. Either way, that's why she's junk, and what we replaced it with was the gear style, so that it doesn't have any of these wearing parts and should hold up and last a lot longer. So I've torched a few of these. They work really good on the street, but if you start using them on the racetrack and start doing donuts with them, they burn up pretty quick. So this is an actual Auburn gear, I believe. Yeah, there's a logo right there. So definitely a problem that I had, and I'm glad that I got it fixed so that this is one less thing that I have to worry about while we're far out of town. All right, we're only less than 2 weeks away from the Power Tour. Car's pretty much complete with the exception of door panels. I've got my mirrors put on. I've got the door panel off on the other side because I still have to redo it. Hopefully I can get those done. Door panels are the least of my concern. If I have to drive with a torn door panel, I'm not really worried about it. But pretty much this car is ready to go, and hoping for really good weather because I do still plan to take this car. Just depending on if it's going to rain every day, I might end up taking my other car just because I don't know how this is going to drive in the rain. I've never actually taken it and drove it when it was wet out, so I'm not sure if that hood scoop's going to really enjoy sucking water driving down the highway. But we're within another week or so, we should be able to see what the weather is in all the cities and where we're going, and it should give me a good idea. I really hope I'm taking this car, but either way, it's fixed and we should be able to have some real fun with it. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on Power Tour.